at what point did you kind of come to know that, hey, psychopathy might be part of my story? Do you want to walk our listeners
Yeah, I
through
mean,
what happened?
sure. There's complete surprise, absolute surprise. And, you know, we had spent a lot of time from about 1997 until today, but there was a whole stretch there where we formed a consortium around the country of psychiatry. It's biological psychiatry, where we're saying, how do we put together genetics, allelic data with imaging data? How do we merge those with the clinical data and come up with a way to directly and quickly diagnose people based on the interaction of the imaging and the genetics? And that occurred from which is personalized medicine, it's personalized psychiatry, and it really worked, and it had patents on it, and it was, and so it really went bang. And so we did that from the late 90s through, and a lot of the people are retired and gone now, but certainly up through 2015. But I'm still working and publishing with 2-3 of them, and we're doing the same thing. And it's become more intensive, because now we look a lot at transposons, transposable elements, and in some of the epigenetic markers. So it's the same sort of idea of creating mathematical statistical models of being able to zoom right in immediately if they're depressed, if they have Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, doing a lot of work on schizophrenia. And but at the same time, in parallel, a very minor thing, not even tertiary, quaternary part of my work. This started in 1989. We got a really good PET scanner in the Department of Psychiatry here. And we had there's only 6 or 7 in the world that had the resolution. It was an HRRT plus PET scanner with wonderful, resolution, where you could really break down. This was a neuroanatomist dream. I'm a neuroanatomist at heart. And where you could see subsectors of the insula, subsectors of the amygdala, like real microscopy almost. And so we're taking these techniques, and we had one of the clinical trials we were going through was on Alzheimer's disease, and we were looking. There was there were some alleles missing. It was the ApoE, but it didn't account for all that much of the variance. There was some other epistatic interaction, that is, gene interaction somehow, and we were kind of looking for that other gene. So we did a clinical trial, and at the end of that, we had all the patients, but not enough of the control. So we really wanted to get this done. So I said, look, hey, I'll do it. I'll get my family to do it. I said, my wife, I'll have to ask her, because her whole family, she's got a lot of Alzheimer's in her family. So that would be scary for her to find out something like that. But she was funny about it, because she had just had massive non-Hodgkin's lymphoma tumors in 2000, 2001, 2002, but it was treated. It never came back. It was great. So her attitude was, look, I'm going to die of lymphoma and cancer before I die of Alzheimer's. So who gives a shit? She's like, that's how she is. And so we went and did it, and did some of her, kids, did, some of my brothers, myself, her. And so we did the PET scans, we did the genetics, we did the psychometrics, and then the data came back. But the data came back at the same month that I had finished analyzing a whole bunch of scans. Some were fMRI, SPECT scans, PET scans from different clinics around the country. And so, because I had been looking at serial killers from about 1989, but it was like one at a time, one every year or something, some of these high profile people, and looking at the analysis of what in the scans, not the genetics, but what's in the functional brain scans. And so, but at the end of that, I got a whole load of these. And so I analyzed it, and lo and behold, and nobody had ever really come up with a full comprehensive sort of view of what would be the psychopath pattern. Not what's the pattern of a murderer or killer, what's the psychopath pattern. And so I analyzed those, and they fit in really neat groups of, there was a whole group that was, there were impulsive murderers. Then there was a disorganized ones that had brain damage, get hit in the head with a hammer, a lot of drugs. But then there were these other cases that were clearly different. And I did this blindly because I don't, a lot of times when you're doing work, forensic work, and in legal work like we were doing, up front who the person is. And this is no way to do science, right? Because everybody, most honest person, scientists will want to make a story. Oh, this is the psychopath. There must be something there, but I didn't know anything. But they fell in these really neat patterns. So I had a pile, though, the final pile of those on my desk in the office at that time. This is 2005, and was starting to give talks to vet the idea because this was something new, right? And I was giving it to psychology, psychiatry department, cog sci, law schools, all in different forensic groups to vet it out at that time. So I've got those there, and now the two technicians come into my office with this different set of scans having to do with Alzheimer's, had nothing to do with psychopathy. But even though we used the tasks on the PET scans and on the fMRI, that would evince emotional empathy, would evince, it was part of that package. So it wasn't just for Alzheimer's and schizophrenia, it was broadly for different types of attention and included empathy type of thing. So it was useful that way. It was more comprehensive. So when I looked through these, I went through the pile of my family scans, and they're color coded because you use the flame. Everybody's seen the flame. Red means that area of the brain is hotter than a normal person or hotter under a drug condition, and the blue are really cold lower areas. And so you have the flame scale. So I quickly went through because I've seen so many of these scans for all sorts of disorders, right, over the years. And I looked through and I got through almost the entire pile, and they look grossly normal. I was really happy about this. None of them looked like there was any problem, and certainly not an Alzheimer's problem, because we had I created with a machine learning guy a way to analyze and diagnose with just with a computer when it was like 98%. So I had to teach the computer, so I knew all the little angles and everything with this. But going through, and it was great. I said, my God, my wife, I didn't know the names of the people, but all of them were fine. I got to the last scan at the bottom of the pile, and I looked at it, and I said, and I looked up at the technician. I said, okay, this is really funny. Okay, you slipped in one of the murderers, right? I said, because whoever this cat is, should not be walking around in open society, because it was so pathological. And it didn't have any other problems, but it had no activity in the ventromedial and orbital cortex, at the base of the frontal lobe, nothing in the anterior medial temporal lobe. The amygdala was kind of a speckled hot and cold. The anterior insula had a weird pattern for, the type of empathy that you would find in somebody with psychopathy. Now, it's not people have that pattern have psychopathy, but that's the trait, and it was consistent with that. So I just laughed and I said, guys, this is very funny. Okay. They go, no, this is really one of your family. I said, you got to be kidding. And so that's when I had to pull the tape off to see what it was. And of course, that's when Gandalf showed up at my door, and it was me. I was it. And so that's when the shit hit the fan a bit.
Wow. I could imagine sifting through so many scans, and this is what you do for a living, and then you come across one at the end and you find out it's you. It's a whole punch in the face, I would say, given your knowledge about psychopathy up until that point.
Well, when I saw it, I just laughed. I just laughed, and I said, well, my theory must be wrong, obviously, because I'm okay. I'm a perfectly normal person. This can't be the right pattern. So as a scientist, I just said, it's not that I have psychopathy. It's that this pattern that I discovered was not the right one, because it couldn't be me. That was my response. And I kind of blew it off. And when the genetics came back a while later, and it was the same thing, with my family. And I had all these alleles of different, especially the monoamines like serotonin, dopamine, norepinephrine, but also oxytocin, vasopressin, and different, alleles associated with different kinds of empathy and aggression and violence, and I had them all. So it was just like that. But I still, when I saw it, when we broke the code on the genetics, I still kind of just didn't care or just laughed it off. I really did. I was like, and I mean, and two curious things I would say happened when some of the psychiatrists I work with, right, and who know me and looked at this, they said, this is really pathological. They said, what do you think about that? I said, I don't give a shit. And one of them said, that's your problem. You really don't care. And I didn't. I don't. But the same week, at the end of that week, I went back and I mentioned it to my wife. I said, Dee, her name is Diane. I said, I had the weirdest kind of odd experience here. I went through these scans and everything, we're all normal. Your brain looks normal. It's great. No Alzheimer's problem, probably from, the data we had. I said, but my PET scan was completely pathological. I said, it looked like the worst of the murderers I had seen who were psychopaths. And she said something really with a straight face. She goes, it doesn't surprise me. That was a curious thing because I've known her forever. I know when she's kidding and not kidding. She was not kidding, but I still blew it off. I just, and then went on.